For this case study, we're going to take a target that's commonly used for operational efficiency. Again, we're going to simply call this operational efficiency. As our statement, how the target is normally written, again, we're going to keep it simple, but we're going to put reduce administrative processing time across the operations team. Let's take that to the target frame. Okay, now in the target frame, let's insert the intent. So this is what we're trying to commit to. So here we'll put reduce the average time taken to complete administrative processing tasks. Let's leave it at that. And then it's going to be a one-time result. But it is going to be a result, so we'll pick that. That's the kind of change. Now if we look at control, we will control how administrative tasks are assigned, processed, and reviewed within the operations team. And so that's direct control. Now for mechanism, to start with, let's say improve internal processes and encourage better workflow management. Now that's quite a general statement, that one, so we'll start there and see how it goes, but it's more important to get something in to start with. You've got a little bit of structure forming, and then we can always try and tighten it as we go forward. For evidence now, let's say the completion reports and workflow tracking updates. What's that's an activity. For expectation, reduce average administrative processing time by 25% within 6 months. And that's going to be a result, actually, because we're trying to reduce the time by 25%. Now we're ready to take this upstream and examine the structure. Okay, so this has come back as unsupported. Target commits to reducing administrative processing time across the operations team. Mechanism to evidence. The evidence limits what can be demonstrated about whether the mechanism caused the outcome. Mechanism to expectation. A generic mechanism is carrying high structural load relative to the expected outcome. Preceding implies reliance on the declared control over task management and the effectiveness of the generic mechanism to achieve the specified reduction in processing time. So what's happening here is the operational activity is being used as evidence for an outcome. The structure doesn't yet show how the reduction in processing time will actually be demonstrated. So let's just run this through alignment first. The system here is just checking whether the declared structure actually makes the wording matches the wording being used, which in this case it's happy that it does. Now, rather than taking it straight to resolution and looking at that, let's actually return and edit the structure. Just see if we can tighten this up a little bit manually. So ultimately it was the mechanism and the evidence that failed to match the expectation. So let's just try and tighten this. At the moment, we've got improve internal processes and encourage better workflow management. So it's a generic statement of intent as opposed to an actual mechanism that could be used to create this outcome. So let's actually just take that out for now, just tighten that up. So we're going to go now to introduce a standardized processing workflow with defined approval stages, task ownership, and automated status. Let's say tracking, I think we'll go with. So now we've tightened that a little bit. So now we're actually mentioning processes that we're putting in place, approval stages, task ownership. So these are actions that we need to take, obviously, but these are now specific actions rather than general intention. So we can tighten that. Now let's look at the evidence as well, because again, evidence completion reports and workflow tracking updates now no longer matches the mechanism itself. So let's do the same with this. Let's tighten this up. Average processing time reports. So we're now stating what we're looking at. Measured from task creation to completion across the operations workflow. And that's going to actually be a final result because we're measuring it across a period of time, but it will give us an outcome at the end of that. So now let's just rerun this, take this back upstream and see if at times we've really now started to put in a little bit of detail, and very often this is the sort of target that would be easily accepted, and actually it would fall on those two areas and lenses under load, and that would only come at the end of some of the outcome itself. And so you would be retrospectively looking back and actually going, why hasn't this added up? So let's take this back upstream and just see whether we've tightened this a little bit closer to what we need. And we can see actually we're not just closer, now it is recognized as a solid structure and is happy to accept that. Again, always if we've changed the lenses, we'll just check alignment to make sure that it matches. Now in this case, it's flagged evidence type activity completed. So actually let's apply that alignment and confirm and replace that. Now that's been aligned, so we know that that's correct. It's still returned as solid, so it's not made it any weaker. Let's just go back and check what's actually been updated here. So all that's happened is, for evidence, we marked it as an outcome, a final result. It's actually saying that this is an activity that's been completed, so averaging processing time reports measured from task creation to completion, saying that that's an activity. So that is, which is correct in the sense that we do have to actually carry that task out. So the right to actually correct that and again make that a little tighter. It's something that you've got to ultimately arrange within your organization for someone to actively monitor. So so now we've got a tight target in here. We can go back, let's take it upstream one last time, make sure that it returns back as solid. We've got no structural identified tensions there, and so we can now mark as finalized and exit back to our targets, and that's ready to carry some weight.